Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we help everyone find high-value hi-fi, home theater, and headphone equipment. And today we're talking about the PSB Imagine XB bookshelf speakers. Wasn't super impressed when I pulled them out of the box. But that all changed when I started listening to them. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the PSB Imagine XBs. The PSBs, Imagine XB. I don't know why I point to my head when I say Imagine. These come in at $5.99, okay? PSB sent these out to me, but they didn't ask me to say anything. And currently, on PSB's website, they have, it looks like a 20% off coupon. And the thing about it is, I don't have an affiliate relationship with PSB, which means if you buy them from PSB's website, I don't get anything. I'll still link these from places that I do have an affiliate relationship with. But if you like them and you want to pull the trigger, just buy them from PSB and save $120. Okay. Specifications. There's a little speaker, a little tiny speaker. It even looks smaller like on camera and when I take pictures. It's small. It's not that small. It's not as small as it looks right now. Specifications don't always tell the whole story of a speaker, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. All right. Let's talk about the tweeter. Okay, it's 1-inch titanium dome, tweeter. Has a little PSB logo, kind of vertical, I don't know, plastic thing. And then a rubbery surround. And this rubber surround is similar to the material that you'd find on the Klipsch RP500M, 6, really any of the reference Premier series. It has kind of a similar rubber surround around the tweeter. Theirs is like a square though. This one is circular. Underneath that, you have a 5¼ inch polypropylene driver. It's some type of molded driver. It looks pretty good. It's yellow. You have a silver real phase plug, which means it is not attached to the woofer, so it moves around the phase plug. Has a really nice beefy surround. Around that, there's a plastic molded piece that kind of looks like a waveguide. It looks nice. This whole front baffle is pretty cool. It's got a vertical slot that goes basically bisects the tweeter and the woofer. The front baffle is rounded a bit and then goes kind of inlaid into the enclosure. Tweeter has a similar vibe to the Alpha series. The grills, they press fit into the baffle with posts here. Not my favorite. I wish they were magnetic. But it doesn't really matter because I would probably leave the grills off these anyway because they're a pretty handsome speaker. So the XBs, the Imagine XBs, come in any color that you want as long as it's this one and it's basically black. So the exterior, or whatever type of wrap they have going on, and I do not believe this is actual veneer. It looks like wood grain. There is some etching in here and it looks nice. You know, from far away, it looks pretty good. It's not as bad as, like, a lot of the speakers look like it's just wood-colored wallpaper that they wrap around it. This looks a little bit nice. On the back, you will find a port up here. Plastic flange shoved into the enclosure, and then there is a cardboard tube glued to the end of that. And then you got the little logo, the little sign right here, PSB speakers. On the back, you have binding posts that are in a cup that is screwed into the enclosure. I'm assuming on the other side of that is the crossover. Binding posts, not that great. I wasn't super impressed with them. These binding posts are what you would find on like a $200 ELAC, the first generation, or even some lower cost speakers from Dayton Audio or places like that. Not the best binding post, but it doesn't really matter. I don't really care that much because these sound pretty good. The design philosophy on this, as far as like the aesthetic vibe, is pretty cool. I like it. The actual build quality, materials, exterior, the grills, the binding posts, they're not as good as other products in the price category. Like, I don't know, SVS Primes, Triangle, Bro 3s, Klipsch, RP500, 600Ms, ELAC, Debut Reference, ELAC Unify 2.0. All of those, they feel like they're built a little bit beefier than this thing is. I'm not saying, like, the enclosure's fine. I think I think the important parts of this speaker are built fine. Aesthetically, though, I feel like it's a little chintzy compared to other speakers in the price category. I still think these are braced pretty well, though, because at volume or higher volumes, I didn't feel like there was any issues coming from the enclosure vibrating. I also put my hand on top, and while it vibrated, it wasn't as bad as some enclosures that aren't braced as well. Frequency response rating, rated down to 55 hertz on the bottom, up to 23,000 hertz on the top. That doesn't sound super impressive, but specification ratings never tell the story about how a speaker actually sounds. And this one hits like a, 35-year-old welder on dollar beer night. I had these hooked up to the Marantz NR1711. It's a receiver, home theater receiver in my living room, rated at 50 watts per channel, 2 channels driven, I think. It's 50 legitimate watts. Anyway, these have a sensitivity of 87 dB. That's not super low. That's not super high. Kind of on the lower side of middle. Point being is that 50 watt receiver had no problem driving these. They're rated at a nominal 8 ohm impedance, but they do dip down to 4 ohms occasionally. I don't think you're going to have any problem running these off of any receiver or amp out there, unless it's like a really low powered tube amp. Lateral soundstage and imaging. Well outside the boundaries of the speaker. I was watching Mr. Robot. There was a scene where somebody was in the shower. In the background, way back, way to the right, I thought I had a leak in the house. I had to pause it to make sure there wasn't actually water coming down my wall to the right of the speaker. So I think that's a good litmus test. These do a pretty good job of lateral soundstage and imaging. Center imaging, not as locked down and as definitive as some speakers, but to be fair, those speakers you have to toe in just perfectly to get that perfect center image. These aren't as fickle. So I think most people in most situations are going to get a better center image out of these than they would out of speakers that actually have a really good center image, because they have a wider sweet spot. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. These center image, just fine. Let's talk about bass. Oh my, bass, oh my, bass. These things hit with authority, so much so that I had to unplug the subwoofer to make sure that it wasn't on. I listened to these in direct and pure direct mode on my Marantz. Every song that I played, I was shocked at how effortlessly these things handled the bass. And it didn't cover up the mids. Mids had a bit more soul, a little bit warmth. It was really incredible. Highway to Hell, just punching it. So I don't think this bass is like super neutral, but they love rock and roll. And even less dynamic acoustic stuff, it just seemed like they added a bit more soul to it. They don't extend down super low, so certain songs that have very low bass hits, like Narcissistic Cannibal at the 1 minute mark by Korn, you're not going to hear that part. But you're not going to miss it either, because it doesn't feel like you're missing anything. The last thing you're going to say about these speakers is that they don't have bass. Very impressed. There is a cover of War Pigs by Faith No More, and I just sat back and smiled with that song. Let's talk about mid-range. Not covered or veiled at all. And I thought it was going to be when I first heard these speakers. I'm like, oh, okay, these are bassy. They're going to have zero mid-range clarity. And that's just not the case. There Will Be Time by Mumford & Sons, Baba Maul. His voice was, now granted, it's a little bit warmer. It doesn't have the finite details that some speakers have. Female vocals, again, not as crazy on display as something like the Klipsch RP500M or RP600M. But female vocalists, especially those that aren't like super soprano-y-ish, haunting. Adele, Hello by Adele was just sit back, mind-boggling awesome, because it was just almost like you could almost see like smoke just kind of hanging out in the air. Smoky, very good, haunting, smoky voice. Very good. Definitely not forward. Definitely not pushed forward. So this is more of a, I wanted to lean in to this speaker. I didn't feel like vocals were pushed back. I didn't feel like they were forward. Felt like they were in line with the rest of the Soundstage, if just a little bit stepped back. So I really enjoyed this speaker's mid-range because it had me just loving it. Just sitting back and enjoying the presentation. Nothing harsh. No sharpness. It's a smoother presentation. But don't think I mean not detailed. It's just very enjoyable. A little bit on the richer, warmer side. Let's talk about treble. Treble is detailed, but not as airy as some other speakers. Breath sounds from Uninvited from Alanis Morissette were more present on the Klipsch RP500, 600M, SVS Primes, ELAC Unify 2.0s. There is more air presence in those speakers. There's some here, just not as much. There's still detail, decay in cymbals, Africa, the Weezer cover. Cymbals hung out in the air, but it wasn't, again, as on display as some other speakers. However, with a titanium tweeter, I thought that this could have some hints of that metallic sound, and there was none. If you would have told me this is a soft tone tweeter, I'd been like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Soft tone tweeter. I wouldn't call the treble on this rolled off. Definitely not the star of the show, though. But as you turn this speaker up and you get it probably 73, 75 dB as far as sound pressure level, 75 dB and up, that treble is going to start to come to life. And that reminds me of the ELAC debut series, the first generation, not the second generation. That speaker seemed a little bit less exciting at lower volumes, but as you turned it up, things started coming to life. Same thing here with these PSBs. You get a little bit of juice through them, treble starts to come alive. Still detail in there, just at lower volumes, the treble is not on display. And you will turn these speakers up. You will. And they'll fake you into thinking they're not being loud. And then someone will come in from the other room and scream at you. And you won't hear them because it is loud. And then eventually they'll get your attention. And then you'll find out, oh my goodness, this is really loud. But it fakes you into it. The ELAC Unify 2.0 was another speaker that would fake you into not realizing how loud they were. Anyway, these are really good. Zero fatigue, again, on these speakers. No harshness in the treble at all. No peaks, no weirdness in the treble. What are my final thoughts? Final thoughts. When I pulled these out of the box, I was pretty underwhelmed. But when I started watching movies, TV, listening to music through them, I was pretty blown away. PSB even says on their website this is for like a starter setup or for medium to small rooms, and I couldn't disagree with that more. I think they're selling themselves short. I had these in the biggest room in my house, 20-foot ceilings, open concept, no problem filling that space with sound. And not just sound, but I mean bass. You could feel the bass in that room with these speakers. Totally blown away. They're little, but it's like they have that inferiority complex. It's like that little dog who's being very ferocious. This is like that dog, except it's not annoying. And since I was getting that kind of sound out of these, I kept thinking to myself, why? I wonder what the floor standards sound like. I wonder how big those sound, because these speakers sound way bigger than they actually are. If you're wanting a very sparkly sound signature at lower volumes, this is not the speaker for you. Again, this speaker really comes to life around 75 dB and higher. When you get a little bit of volume through these, that treble comes back in line, and it's a very pleasing and actually very balanced sound signature. As it is, though, it does have a little bit of a lean to the warm side. And if you listen even at medium levels, you're going to get a very balanced sound signature from these with I'm not saying the bass is overpowering, but man, it's just, again, it's very surprising just how much bass comes out of these speakers. Build-wise, finish-wise, these kind of feel like a $300 speaker. Sound-wise, they kind of sound like a $600 or $750 speaker. They sound really good. So I'll make that trade. I'd rather have the sound quality than the finish quality or the aesthetics. Very impressed with these. Monolith from Monoprice, they tried to pull off a sound signature like this with their Encore B6s, and they just came out a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago. They did not pull that off. These pull that sound signature off. Just a warm oomph, lots of bass, great mid-range, treble that's detailed but not on display, comes to life at higher volumes. That's what Monolith tried to do. That's what PSB did do. So the Imagine XBs managed to pull off an incredible low end, effortless low end, warm, rich sounding mid-range, detailed highs at higher volumes, without a hint of shoutiness in this tiny of a package. Pretty amazing. I think it plays well with all genres of music. I think the $600 price range is worth it. I don't think they're built like $600 speakers, but I think they sound like $600 speakers, or at least the speakers that I've listened to that are in that price category. Recommended. Highly, at $480, highly recommended. So if you can get them on their website for $480 right now, and you know that you're okay with the sound signature, that it's not going to be super sparkly at lower volumes, take a hard look at these. They're so small too, which is cool because they have so many placement options. Very impressed. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we have Patreon-only Zooms. We also have Patreon-only Facebook group and Discord server. You can also sign up for Amazon Music or Tidal Music. There are links in the description. Sign up. Even if it's only for a trial, I get a couple of dollars. You can also buy the products through my affiliate links. I'll link this, and it won't be an affiliate link, but I'll also link this with affiliate links. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen through your new PSB Imagine XB bookshelf speakers that play way bigger than they are, and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.